Here's to the women who won't settle, the badasses, the rebels, the ones who know they deserve more, those who know how to get their worth, those who refuse to settle for mediocre careers. You can hate them or you can love them, but the one thing you can't do is ignore them. Why? Because you admire them. Welcome to Her Career Talk. I'm your host, Olivia Jaras. Here you'll find the tools, inspiration, and advice to help you take back and stay in control of your career. You see, as a woman, you already have some incredible tools and skills that can be used to your advantage in the workplace. We're here to show you how to use those tools. So let's go ahead and get started. So ladies, welcome back to another episode of our podcast here. I am so thrilled to have Kim Chewning here. Now, Kim, you've probably seen her in our Facebook groups, whether that's the Empower Society or the Inner Circle, because Kim is one of our own. She's been through her career school. You are part of the Empower Society, and she has crushed it. Literally, you are an example to lead by, because I just remember a few months ago, Kim had posted this like really sad post with like a flower with frost and saying like, listen, you guys, I'm down in the dumps. I'm unemployed. Like things suck right now. And I just can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And now she is not just employed. You are the director of operations at a real estate property company, real properties, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And you're crushing it. You are a few months in and you are really a role model for all of us to follow. And I just wanted to pick your brains. Tell us about your story. So, Kim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, listen, I want to drive and dive straight into your story. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and where you're coming from so that everybody understands the real story, because it wasn't always as nice as, where it is now, where you're director of operations, managing teams, making good money and stuff. Where was it before?
I think how I got to the devastated, frosty picture is that I have always taken pride in the fact that I was a really good employee. I got promoted from within. I had a career that started a little more than 20 years ago in real estate, primarily focused on property management, but I was also an asset manager. I worked in development and in project management, everything in real estate. And I always was one of the hardest working people in the office, always one to be promoted, always very loyal to the companies I worked for. I like to change the jobs that I do, but I often change the jobs within the same company. So, throughout my career, I was often promoted, and to the point that, I was working my way up and did sort of, I look at my career now as there was this ending point and then there was this new beginning point. So my ending point was as director of property and asset management for a company that I thought was going to be my dream company, and it just wasn't, for a variety of reasons. So then I found myself unemployed in February of this year, about 2 weeks before, everybody's world crumbled with COVID. So then I was home unemployed and COVID started. So that was kind of what led up to me joining you were my first phone call after I was unemployed. And it was, I knew that I had let things slip. I knew that my profile on LinkedIn was outdated. The only thing I had that was updated was an updated picture, and everything else was outdated. I had no connections. I had rarely used LinkedIn. I had an outdated resume. I had not maintained even my connections within my industry in Northern New England. So I really landed hard when I
Or out of
landed.
touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
you know what? What's really interesting that you're talking about is this whole component of loyalty, and I see so many women who are so freaking loyal for years, decades.
Yeah.
And then just out of the blue, they get laid off, right? And it's so hard. It's so tough to like, I just want to get your thoughts on that, because it's not like it's a broader syndrome. It's so many women, and so many of us are really loyal to a fault, to our employers in particular. I don't know about everything else, but we're loyal to a fault, and then that doesn't get rewarded the way that we expected it to, right? Then you get laid off, then COVID happens, and sorry, we know you were loyal, but we can't afford you. Like, what's your thought on that?
I think it is a change in times, but also a difference in the way that women approach their careers. For me, I was always a hard worker, and I really like the business side of my career. I like the numbers. I like the bottom line, but I also look at it more like I just said, I like it. And my approach to my work was not, I am a business asset to this company. My approach to work was, I'm a human and they're humans, and we're connecting on a human level as much as on a business level. And I just don't think that's the way business is done. I don't think employers look at employees as someone that they have to be loyal to. I think that times change. Times change very fast, and companies that survive have learned to be agile and have learned to pivot as quickly as they can. And in that mindset, they look at employees in a different way. And I think that women, just based on the lives that we lead and our continued position in our families and our upbringing, and there's lots that goes into all of this,
cultural background.
We look at our careers in a much more personal way than we should. So we're not continually thinking of ourselves as a business. We're thinking of ourselves as a person sitting in an office doing this personal work.
Contributing to the bottom line.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what did you do then at this point when you found yourself like, all right, and now COVID also hits. I'm unemployed and COVID hits.
I took a moment and I was devastated. I was a little panicked, but then I kind of pulled myself together, and I did a couple things. One, I made panic phone calls to business connections who I knew I could talk to, but they weren't very good phone calls because I hadn't formulated a plan yet. So I made these phone calls that were really more like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. What's your thought? So that didn't really go anywhere. But then I did the Her LinkedIn challenge. And that ended up getting me the focus I needed, but also the tools that I needed to take the next steps. So for me, I've always, I think it was a source of pride that I've never reached out to people for help, and just have never been very honest to the point where I allowed myself to say, here's the position that I'm in, and I'm hoping you can help me. And that was a really hard statement for me to make. It hurt my ego, but it did hurt my ego, but it's also a weird, it's an unsettling position to ask people for help, knowing that they're busy, that they might actually need your help, that they might be worse off than you are, that, you know, there's so much that goes into it, but
and that it could even also reject you. Like isn't it, I've found that whenever I'm feeling vulnerable and I'm like in one of those hard, like against the wall places, and you ask for help and you put yourself in a vulnerable space, it's scary as heck, but it can also be liberating.
Yeah.
In so many ways. I feel like sometimes it just offloads from your shoulders the responsibility of having to have the solutions, right? That you're just saying like, listen, you guys, like, I don't have the solution. I need help. Phone a friend.
Yeah.
Give me a lifeline.
Yeah. It's funny. The first person that I really admitted that to was my husband. And he knew I needed help, of course. But one day I woke up and I was like, I don't think I can figure this out. I don't know what I'm going to do. I need help with this. And he was the first one who said to me, well, you know, I have a couple friends I could call for you, and maybe you could talk to them about your job. And I was like, oh, I don't think I can do that. You know, so we put that on hold. He was willing to put that on hold. And then really my light didn't go off until I did the Her LinkedIn challenge. And it gave me, I think it really, you know, what that did for me was gave me a place to focus and something to look at every day. So I had been drowning in Indeed and LinkedIn job postings. And I was doing what so many people do. And I was sending in resume after resume. And I was spending hours on these cover letters and not knowing where they were going, not getting feedback, not even knowing how to get feedback. And so Her LinkedIn challenge allowed me to feel like I was still being productive at making moves towards improving my career while not sending in a crazy amount of resumes. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I was, you know, when I first started that challenge, not only did I not have any connections, so I think I had 24 or 25 connections on LinkedIn, and I work in an industry where connections are everything. So, you know, I had really never used LinkedIn. So my profile was also, it was just almost like random words, and I had job titles, but I didn't know how to optimize the work that I had done. I didn't know how to illustrate what I had done. I didn't know how to make sure people saw what I had done. And what I really didn't understand is that in finding new followers, I was also finding people who I could then contact and have real conversations with. So I knew that LinkedIn was about networking, but I just didn't know how to do it, or that people were actually willing to talk to people because they were connected on LinkedIn.
It's kind of sad because most people think, like, when they think to use LinkedIn, right, they find themselves in between jobs or like searching for something, and they see the job postings and they apply to the postings, not really realizing that for the most part, they're going to end up in just a pile of resumes instead of actually connecting with humans. Right. Which is like so heartbreaking because there's this whole other side of the platform, the one that you're talking about, that allows you to connect with other human beings and communicate with them if you do it right and not in a spammy way. Right.
Right. Yep.
So can you fast forward a little bit? Like, okay, you started, like you took back control of your LinkedIn profile. Then what did you do? Like, I would like to get like a let's condense everything that you did so that then we can build probably like, what would it look like if, you know, you all of a sudden found yourself unemployed again? How would you do it again? Like, what would you be doing? Right.
So the first thing I did was targeted companies that I wanted to work for. And in building my connections, I went after almost everybody who I could connect with in my top companies. And I would say I really concentrated on my top 5 companies. And at the time when I was starting, I thought I wanted to work for the big real estate companies, the ones that are known internationally, and also, by the way, get high rankings for employee satisfaction. So I started, I'm going to say shamelessly, but I had a reason for it, but I shamelessly started targeting people with the highest titles that I could find. So I was going after, managing partners. I was going after presidents. I was, anybody who I knew was, and I did that because I wanted, after my experience at my last job, it was like 2.5 years of devastation for me, because I knew for 2.5 years, I knew I made the wrong choice in a job. And it wasn't just what I was doing, it was the company culture. I didn't fit in with the company culture. I didn't fit in with the owners. Our system of doing things didn't align. So we didn't mesh from day one. And I don't think it was my fault. I don't think it was their fault. It just was. So when I was targeting these companies, I wanted to make sure, this is on my dream list, but what if it's not my dream company? What if I get there, work so hard to get there?
Because that's an important realization, is like, most often we find a job and we hope that we get the job, but we don't realize, or we don't stop to think, well, maybe I don't want this job.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe I'm the one who does not want this particular opportunity. We it's like, we're automatically putting ourselves in a lower level position, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And my question for you is, do you think you will ever put yourself in that situation again? Will you ever be stuck for 2.5 years in a job you don't like?
Definitely not.
Now that you've experienced that.
I would like to think that I've learned enough that I wouldn't actually even take a job that I didn't like, because I learned a lot about what matters to me. And I was focused on job title and on salary, because I wanted so badly to get to a certain point in my career where I thought I would be able to be proud to say what I was doing. But I realized, when I was talking to all of these people in these big companies, that, again, I can't say I had a bad experience. I will say, just as kind of a footnote, it was shocking to me how many people with these big titles were just willing to say, when I asked them pointedly, can you spare 20 minutes to have a conversation with me about my career and how I might end up with a job like yours? I had so many people without any previous connections say yes and give me that time.
That's so freaking.
Yeah. And I don't know, I've kind of wondered, is it because, this was at the height of COVID when I was making these contacts. So everybody was at home all the time. And so maybe people were more willing to talk to me because of that. But I also think what I found is that people just want to help people.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, probably it was heightened because of COVID, but also people in high positions generally have a big ego. And when you're asking them,
yeah,
but it's true. It's true, right? They're really proud of what they've achieved. And whenever you're putting yourself in a situation where you're saying like, hey, I admire you.
Yeah.
Can you please tell me, how do I become you? Of course.
Yeah.
Of course people spare.
Yeah. And if you do it in a sincere way, they know that. But I think everybody's busy and nobody wants to waste their time. But if you're approaching people in a sincere way with a pointed question or a pointed reason for talking with them, people will say yes.
So then what happened next? How did you land this job?
So
because it's a pretty high level job too. It's director of operations. It's not like assistant.
So one of the things I realized, so I had all these conversations and I realized that all my dream companies weren't actually my dream companies. And so I started thinking about what really mattered. And again, COVID, sort of the time that we all had because of COVID helped with this a little bit. You know, I sat down and I literally made a paper list with a pencil and an eraser and scratched things out. What is important to me in my next job? What is not important to me? Job title fell by the wayside. I took it a step further and I said, we are in a time of COVID, so there's a lot of companies that are in a hiring freeze, especially in my industry. It's interesting, in real estate and property management, in many ways, people are working harder and there's more opportunity, but there's also, like every industry, I suppose, a lot of layoffs happening, a lot of hiring freezes because the companies just aren't sure what their future is. So any new job is just not really in existence. But so I sat down and I made a list and I put everything on my list that was truly important to me, and I didn't rule anything out. So what I had done before doing this list is I had said, I live in small town New England, and there is no way I'm going to get a good job and not have to go to Boston. So I ruled everything out that was local. I wasn't talking to local contacts. And I was trying to make big contacts in big businesses in the big city. And when I got done with my list, I realized that one of the top things on my list is that I need to be able to stay in small town New England, and I can commute at least 50% of the time. So it kind of changed who I was talking to, and it opened up my circle for the people I was talking to. I also realized that I wanted a little flexibility in my job. So, you know, I worked hard to get to the point that I was in my career, and I didn't want to take steps back in. I didn't want to give up the flexibility I had worked so hard for. And by that, I just mean, you know, I want to take a little extra time with the kids in the morning, and I'm going to get my work done later. I'm going to get my work done maybe on Saturday, but I'm going to get my work done. And I didn't want to give up that kind of flexibility. So it was really, what was on my list was lifestyle as much as anything else. But then I also wanted to make sure that I was in a position where I was still learning, but where I was passing my knowledge off to others. So with that, I started networking and contacting local contacts. And
that's awesome. You ended up local. Your job is local to literally the town you wanted to be in.
Yes.
Like that you live in. It's couldn't be more local. Even though you thought there were no opportunities.
Right. And I contacted, you know, I have friends who I contacted right away, but I went back and, you know, this is where COVID kind of got in the way, because I couldn't just go and have coffee with a friend. So I had to contact people and actually talk on the phone. It was more than texting. I actually had to, you know, contact my friends and say, remember I talked to you way back in February. Now I'm thinking of this, and, you know, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of this? Do you think I can do anything locally? I was sort of willing to switch careers, but not really, because I had found through all my conversations that even though I didn't want to work for the big real estate companies, I really enjoy the work. And it initially I was worried that I was just falling back on it because it was comfortable. It was more than that. I got into the career because I liked it and I'd like to stay in the career. So
That's
I just started talking to people. And again, I found that everybody I talked to wanted to help me. And by the
but
time
you
I
were
went
coming
back,
from a genuine place, right? You weren't just reaching out saying, hey, do you have a job?
right.
Because that just feels,
Yeah.
that's just not genuine.
Right.
That's pushing.
Right.
But you were
So
positioning your ask very deliberately.
yes. And I was saying things like, I know there's only 3 or 4 companies in this area who are even a possibility. How do you think I could work with them? Do you know anybody? And again, this was my friend, so I could say, hey, can you connect me with anybody? And people were very willing to do that. So what ended up happening is there's a local developer of low-income housing and subsidized housing. And that was, so I'm on my second job since I lost my job. The first one came from a friend. It was never advertised. It was
As most are.
right. So it was never advertised. One of my friends just said, I know this woman who works there, and why don't I give her a call and see what she says? And the next day, the friend of a friend called me and said, I hear you and I should talk. And she and I talked, and, a few weeks later, I started. It was a temporary job there. It was a contract type position, and it was working on a project.
Still, like you're landing multiple jobs during COVID.
Yeah,
locally.
It was, yeah, in a town of, I don't know, 13,000 people. Yeah.
With volumes. So let's fast forward to now. What happened now? How did you land this opportunity that you're in now?
So the one thing that I had really learned, my big lesson was do not stop talking to people. Your networking changes based on your circumstances. And my networking then just became sincere conversations with people about how is it going for you? How are you handling COVID? How is your company doing this? What is, what's your approach? What's your future look like? And it was, I really and truly am interested in the industry that I was in. So again, I think that people talked to me because I was very sincere. So through a friend, I learned that this company might be looking to maybe hire someone at some point, maybe in the future, was how it was all presented to me.
So someone told you that there's this potential opportunity for in the future, but you kind of went in and you were like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and network my way into this. I know that there's no posting. It's not actually there.
Yes. So
I'm going to make it happen.
Just called the guy who owns the company and I said, and he and I had met a couple times. So it wasn't a total cold call, so to speak, but he and I hadn't talked for quite some time. But I just called and said, I'm sorry to catch you off guard. Is this a good time to talk? And he said, yes, it is. And I said, here's what I've heard. I just want to let you know that I'm back, I'm local, and I'm interested in talking with you further. And so he and I talked for probably 2 months, maybe, before we really nailed down, here's what you're going to do. And I took, and one of the things that I have learned is I need to be flexible in the way and the timing of how I'm going to get things. So I have in this company, I'm starting for the first 3 months doing different things than I'll be doing starting in January. And I'm not sure that 6 months ago I would have even talked long enough to make that happen.
And the crazy thing is like we go into our job search with a certain expectation. Like we like to anticipate the future and what it's going to look like, but it rarely ends up looking the way we thought it would. And usually it ends up looking better. When we kind of do that process that you just did, where it's like, okay, what do I want? What do I not want? What do I deserve? And what am I going to go after? And you get really clear. And even though you had set images of what it looked like in your head, and right now it doesn't look like at all, it's usually actually a better fit because you were so deliberate in crafting it and you followed your intuition. I don't know. Do you feel like that?
Yes. And again, I don't know how it passed by me for so many years, but I didn't know that you could have a two-way conversation with a potential employer about what you're going to do. And in my past, I was so thankful to anyone who was willing to give me a job that I didn't know I could negotiate the salary. And I feel really ignorant in saying this, but I didn't know I could negotiate the salary. I didn't know I could negotiate benefits. I didn't know I could negotiate terms. I certainly didn't know I could negotiate job descriptions and job titles.
And now you did it.
And it sort of came from, it came a little bit from a position of desperation, in that I knew what I wanted and I knew what I needed. And I knew that I didn't want to end up in the position I was in 2.5 years ago, where I took this job with that little bad feeling in the back of my mind, telling myself it's all going to work out. And I knew going into it that there were certain things that didn't sit quite right with me. But I was so thankful to have this job offer that I put them aside, thinking, but they gave me this job. And so I should be thankful for this job.
I should be loyal. I should be thankful. Yes. Oh, such a powerful story. Now, Kim, before we wrap this up though, I have a question for you. Like, this is a big one. All right. I'm totally catching you off guard, but I want to see what you said. Imagine, picture this. You're in a situation where you lose everything. You lose your job, you lose your salary, your income, all of that stuff. And you have 30 days to get your shit together. Pardon my French, but like, you got 30 days, right? What would you do? Now, the reason, let me give you a little bit of context, is for the women who are listening to this, who find themselves where you found yourself a few months ago in February. You can help them avoid a lot of pain by giving them some of the guidance and advice, the things that you learned. Like, if you were to give them a roadmap for the next 30 days to get their act together and get back on track, what would you tell them to do? So day one, what would you do? You just got laid off, you lost everything. What do you do?
I think, first of all, you need to be in the right mindset. And the mindset that really helped me focus was when someone said to me, you need to treat your career like a business. And when I heard that, it was the best career advice anyone's ever given me. So when I switched my mindset and treated myself like a business, it allowed me to focus in a way that I had never been able to do before. That was Melissa's quote. Right, yeah. And I've quoted her so many times and told so many people, you need to go talk to these people because Melissa's going to give you this advice and it's fabulous. But yes, so Melissa told me that, and it empowered me in a way that I had never been empowered before. So that's the first thing I would tell people is treat yourself like a business. And then you need to, and it seems like when you're looking at a 30-day time frame, it seems like you don't have time to waste, right? So the first thing you want to do, you have to do basic things like get your resume done, because eventually you will need that. And you do have to update your LinkedIn profile. In doing both of those things, though, you have to have this background work done where at some point in the beginning of that 30 days, you need to focus on what it is that you want to do. And even if you only have 30 days, you need to still decide what you want to do. Don't get yourself in this position where you're so desperate that you're trying to look at everything, because it's going to slow you down. It's not going to work well.
All right. So you decide between day 1 and day 5, right? You get clear, treat your career as a business, and get really clear on what you do. Like get absolute career clarity, as we call it. All right. Day 5. What are you doing on day 5?
Day 5, you're reaching out to contacts you already have, and you're figuring out who you want to network with that you've never met before. So you're using whatever tools you can. LinkedIn, of course, is a great one. But if you have professional organizations you're a part of, or any of those other ways that you can network, you're creating a list, and starting on day 5, because you already have your career clarity, you're networking with your contacts and your cold calling, so to speak. Yep. And
did you, out of curiosity, did you use the scripts in her career school and in the LinkedIn challenge? Like
I did. Yes, all of them gave me a help, and of course, I think you've suggested to do that. You want to be yourself too. So I started with all of them. It's a matter
of framing the conversations, right? But you took it and you built your conversation into a genuine way of asking, which I think is so powerful.
Yeah. So by day 10, you're having conversations with all of these contacts, and you're narrowing down your target even more. So you're
still making new conversations. What are you doing with the follow-up ones?
So the people you want to keep in touch with, so everybody who was willing to talk to me, I sent a follow-up note to. And some people, it was more of a thank you for taking the time, knowing that I might never talk to them again. Other people, it was thank you for taking the time. Here's what you told me that I want to pursue. So I had one person as an example who said, I would recommend that someone in your position with your background look at asset management at this portion of my company, and why don't you contact somebody? So when I sent my thank you, it was, thank you very much. I would like to pursue asset management. Here's the person you told me to contact. Can you get me their contact? It was very specific follow-up. So I think you're following up in a couple different ways. I, of course, never wrote anybody off, and I followed up with everybody. And same with local people. I just continued pursuing local people, because one of the things I decided is I ideally wanted to stay local. So, depending on how well I knew them, there was one person I knew who I called in the middle of the day, and I said, hey, just want to let you know I'm still looking for a job. And, here's what I'm thinking I'd like to do. But I knew him well enough that I could do that. So I think, in day 10 to day 20, it's really just keep going. You are your own business. I looked at it as I was a sales business. I was selling myself. And so I ran it like I have always run any sales that I'm trying to do. It's follow up, follow up, follow up, and it's very specific.
Okay. So, and then 20 to 30. How do you start closing in on some of these opportunities? Say you've reached out by then to hundreds of people. How do you start closing in on that opportunity that you want, that's going to lead to the job? You might not get hired by day 30, but you're on that right path.
You're on the path. I think that it's really important when you first start networking, it's very big and very broad, and you're not really asking anybody for help more than just advice. And in day 20 to 30, you've narrowed it down enough so that you know of positions that are available. And so your networking will shift from, I want to talk to you about this very general and very broad concept, to, I have heard that there might be this specific opportunity. and I would like to talk to you about that. And that's how I got the 2 jobs that I have, is that I was very specific. I had heard they might be jobs or people might be thinking of things. And I just got over my fear of calling people and asking them. And I just called and asked. And I also approached it with, by the time I had done all this, I had gained a little bit of confidence back. And I approached it with, I'm not asking these people for a favor. I'm bringing my knowledge and my experience to them and saying, can I help you? So I tried for myself to change the way I was looking at it, and which allowed me to change the way I was presenting it to them, which put us both in a better position, I think, to take the next step.
I think that's it's so powerful, Kim. I love that practically what you did, and you might not see this, but during COVID, where there's tens of millions of people unemployed, you landed not just 1 job, you landed 2 jobs in a tiny small of 14,000 people, give or take, that were not posted anywhere. And so many people think that they need to be applying through online applicant tracking systems and just going through that like proverbial career ladder, and they don't really realize there's actually kind of what I call it, like an elevator to get there. And it's not the traditional way that we've been taught to land jobs.
Right.
So congratulations. Like, I think what you've done is so impressive. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, and let me just add this, and I'm sorry, this is not what you asked me to do, but I became an Olivia follower, and I would not have done any of it without her LinkedIn challenge. And I took notes on everything Melissa said to me, and I really took advice from anybody who I deemed to be an expert. So, without that, I wouldn't have done it. I would probably be curled up in a ball somewhere crying still.
So you took advice from our coaches, and thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that so much. I'm going to absolutely relay this to the team. We love hearing these stories. So thank you so much, Kim, for joining me today. Ladies, I hope...
You're welcome.
I mean, literally, she gave you a 30-day roadmap of how to do what she just did. So thank you so much, Kim, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right, that is it for this episode. And if you're ready to take things to the next level, I invite you to check out our free salary coaching Inner Circle Facebook group on, well, of course, Facebook. You just go ahead and search for Salary Coaching Inner Circle on your Facebook search bar, and it will surely show up. You'll get live access to me, the opportunity to engage with our super powerful guest speakers, and you'll get the support of hundreds of career-oriented, like-minded women just like you. So check it out, and also be sure to catch out